I'm Mark Williams. This is the Assistants Podcast. And in this episode, we spoke to Tyson Wheeler, an assistant coach at UMass Amherst, where we spoke about his legendary playing career, the true inventor of the sham guard, as well as his introduction to college coaching, the value of relationships, and he offered some sound advice for the next generation of coaches. Again, I'm Mark Williams, and this is the Assistants Podcast with Tyson Wheeler. Okay, we are here with another installment of the Assistants Podcast. I'm Mark Williams, and I brought somebody along with me today. Actually, he just phoned in, or I phoned him. I don't know how it worked. We're talking on the phone. We brought Tyson Wheeler. Tyson Wheeler, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well, man. Mark, I appreciate you having me on. I'm excited to share some of my knowledge of the game and hopefully help some younger coaches out.
Yeah, that's the premise of this podcast, is primarily to provide a platform for the younger generation to know what it takes to become an assistant coach, because it's not an easy road. It's not an easy road, and people don't really help provide a blueprint. And hopefully you can help out with that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. So now you're currently at University of Massachusetts at Amherst. And how did you end up there? I know you grew up in New London, Connecticut. How did you end up where you are right now? Some Cliff Notes version. Quick one.
Quick one. All right. I ended up at UMass. I was at Fairfield for 10 years with Ed Cooley and Sidney Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
After my 10 years there, I got on at UMass, and I'm going on my third season there at UMass. Well, here at UMass.
Mm-hmm.
After I was done playing basketball professionally overseas, Ed Cooley came to my house and told me he had a job offer for me at Fairfield as a DOBO, which means the director of basketball operations. And I was still trying to play basketball, but he told me, he's like, Tyson, you need to give it up, man. You're getting old. Your game is done. Get into the basketball coaching profession.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I got into coaching. I was lucky.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of guys aren't fortunate enough to know coaches while they're still playing.
Right.
And get an opportunity like I did. So I'm very fortunate that Ed Cooley gave me a chance.
Now, you spoke about your career, because you were a pretty good player. We're going to gloss over your career real quick. You started in New London, Connecticut high school. How was it basketball in New London, Connecticut?
Well, we were one of the best teams in the state when I was coming out of high school. New London was known for their basketball, football, and baseball in the state of Connecticut.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the state of Connecticut is not known for sports and guys going to Division I level, especially in my area.
Right.
So, I wasn't highly recruited coming out of high school. I went to 5-star basketball camp with some of the best players in the country at the time. That's the way I got my exposure. Tom Kinchowski saw me there, and he, by word of mouth and talking to a lot of people, told coaches they should come check me out.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the way I got recruited and seen. And I was fortunate enough to get recruited by, schools like Hartford, Drexel, Long Beach State, Jacksonville, Rhode Island, Western Michigan, and then UConn came in late.
Okay.
So, I was fortunate enough to play well at 5 stars, and I played a little AAU program, and we actually played against Long Island Panthers, BABC. Those were the two main teams that I played against. That got me exposure.
Okay. And then you ended up at Rhode Island, in which you paired up with Catino Mobley, and you guys tormented the whole Atlantic 10.
Right.
And you guys got busy. There's a rumor that the sham guard move is a knockoff of the Wheeler. Is that accurate?
Well, I wouldn't call it a knockoff of the Wheeler, because I didn't invent the move. I was exposed to it by Catino Mobley and Sean Colson, who played with me at Rhode Island, and they learned it from Jerome Poole Allen, who played at Penn.
Mm-hmm.
Jerome was the guy that showed those guys it, and Sean Colson and Catino showed me it one summer after my freshman year at Rhode Island, and I just took it from there. So during my freshman year in college, I used it a few times. Sham guy was still in high school. And then when we played them my sophomore year and Sham was a freshman, I did the move on Sham. And so that summer we would go to Providence College and play pickup with Janelle Thomas, Sham God, Corey Wright, and all those guys. And Sham pulled me to the side after. I was like, yo, Tice, can you show me that move that you did on me?
Uh-huh.
I want to learn it. So I taught him the move, in the old gymnasium up at Providence College, and he just took it from there. And he was fortunate enough to play, I think, in the tournament and did it against Arizona, so that's where everybody saw it when he was doing it against Arizona.
Yeah.
But I actually did it against Arizona my freshman year when we played Damon Stoudemire. But I didn't do it against Damon. I did it against Reggie Geary. So that's where the move came from, Jerome Powell from Philadelphia.
Wow, that's a story that people don't know about.
Yeah. I'm here to enlighten everybody.
Yeah.
That's what you got me on here for.
And I'm going to call Sham and say, yo, Tyson went at your neck.
And I got the video if you want to put it up too.
Yo, send that. But at any rate, so after your Rhode Island experience, you then went, I played professionally for, I would say, almost 10 years? Almost 10 years. And you mentioned that Ed Cooley came to your house. Did you ever envision yourself being an assistant coach or being a coach at all when you were playing?
Never. I thought I would be playing basketball until I was about 42 years old and then retire.
Oh.
And I never thought about coaching. I didn't think I would be a good coach. I was a better player than I am a coach, I believe. Mm-hmm. I had to learn a lot to try to teach young players how to be good players. And it was a difficult transition because everything I learned was by, experience somebody else coaching me and working on my craft. So now I had to try to teach somebody else the same thing. So it was a difficult transition for me, but I think I've gotten better at it.
What was the biggest transition? I know you mentioned as far as communicating and, relaying the message to them, but I find that being a very good basketball player is hard to reach the players that aren't as good. And like Magic Johnson struggled, Isaiah struggled at some point. How were you able to make that transition to be able to reach down to them?
Well, I think a lot of showing them different film clips of different players. Mm-hmm. That helped me out a lot. Trying to explain to them, trying to get them to do the moves that I've made, done, trying to get them to visualize the game from a player's perspective is very hard. Mm-hmm. So when you the great thing about now is that you can break a lot of film down much easier than you could when I played. And slowing the game down for these young players makes it easier for them to understand, and then add the skill set of what I'm trying to teach them and put that together with using their mind. Mm-hmm. I think it's helped them a lot in becoming better. So I think that is something that I learned how to do much better than when I first started to get into coaching.
Now, I can definitely see that, without a doubt. What, in addition to that, what was another transition issue that you had? Because you mentioned video breakdown. Was that something that you had to really learn from the bottom up?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said before, I was the director of basketball operations, and I had to break down every game for all our assistant coaches. And I had to watch a lot of film, and I saw a lot of different ways defense was being played and offense was being played, and I had to understand the game, and I had to study it. And when I broke it down, I would, give it to the other coaches, and I would basically watch the game to try to get the information to them as quick as possible. So I studied it a little bit, but not as much as I should have. Mm-hmm. What made me start really studying was when I got with Sidney Johnson, my third year at Fairfield, and he made me break down all of Princeton's offense, because he came from Princeton. That's a difficult offense to understand, and he's like, Tyson, I want you to watch all our games and break down our offense and tell me what we're trying to do. And so I had to sit there and really study to understand the Princeton offense and how unique it was, and how you needed to have a high IQ to understand it. And then the reason why he wanted me to do that, because he wanted me to teach our guys how to run the offense. But I first had to understand it from my perspective. Right. You understand what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it was a difficult transition for me, but out tremendously. I see the game differently now from a coach's perspective, and now when I'm watching film with the guys, I'm making them try to get their own observation and understanding and build their own IQ by watching it with me, by giving me their feedback. Mm-hmm. I think that's very big. Not always trying to give the players the answers. Let them try to figure out sometimes how to figure the game out themselves. It's just gonna make them better. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would agree. So now, your video, you're doing breakdown, Dobo. Hold on, let's do this. Can you tell the audience how much work is involved in being a Dobo?
Ooh, well, let me put it this way. Nobody expects to get into coach So for me, becoming a dobo, I thought I was going to be on the court, doing workouts, doing skill development, doing none of that stuff.
Right.
Didn't do anything. I was in the office during practice. Cooley had me in the office, breaking film down, ordering meals for our players, ordering buses, ordering hotels, ordering flights, booking all those things for our players, making sure everybody was set after games.
Right.
I had to do all the practice times on the road. I had to make sure the buses were at the airport when we got there, or it was my fault. I had to know where the hotels were.
Right.
So basically, I was a secretary. That's basically what a dobo is. Then in the summertime, I ran camps.
Right.
I was the head of the camps, making sure that the money was collected, that everything was organized, that the canteen was organized. So it was a lot of work that I wasn't accustomed to doing. I think I had 2 jobs in my life. When I was 15, working at the beach, cleaning up garbage, and when I was a junior in college, as a security guard at a courthouse. Those were my only 2 jobs. So this was like a real job for me for my first time.
Right.
And all I did with my life was play basketball. So I wasn't used to it. But it helped me become a better coach.
And it kept you organized because you basically a travel agent, secretary, a day planner, a wedding planner, everything involved. Everything. Car rental specialist.
Kids from school.
Yeah.
Go wash his car.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whatever they needed.
You were
drive 3 hours to go get a videotape for one of our assistant coaches for a scrimmage we had.
And the whole way you were cursing everyone out.
Everyone out. That's not what I expected. And I wasn't getting paid the same as I was playing overseas. So it was tough.
Okay, yeah. That's a good segue. So now, the pay, obviously depending upon the school that you end up, if you start out at UNLV, you're going to make more than you start out at, no disrespect, you're going to start out at, let's say, Hartwick College in upstate New York. So how was it hard? How was the budgeting issue coming from somebody that was making, I'm assuming, big money overseas to now be an assistant coach? Were you married at this time?
Yeah, I was married. Yep, married, going on my 3rd kid. So it was a big adjustment, going to make over 6 figures tax-free in Europe to making about $35,000, $40,000 and getting taxed on that.
And being a dobo running around crazy.
And being a dobo running around crazy, yes. So it was a big adjustment. But, again, I had to learn how to budget my money. I still had to pay my mortgage. I had to still take care of my family. I wasn't getting paid the same. So, it was a huge adjustment that a lot of former players aren't ready for. So I had to figure it out.
Now, when you say former players aren't ready for, why are they not ready? Because like you mentioned, they're going to play till they're 42 years old, and
right. Yeah, I wasn't ready. Like I said, you never know when the game is going to end, and you have to prepare yourself for the ending. And that's something that a lot of players don't do, including myself. Like I said, I thought I was going to play till like I was 42, 43 years old, and then I tore my Achilles at 30. So I was like, oh boy, what am I going to do now? And some people, that make a lot of money playing basketball, they spend lavishly. And then at the end of the day, when it's not coming in like it used to be, you get yourself in trouble. So a lot of former players aren't used to that. And then if you don't keep your relationships with the people that that got you to the position that you were in, and you disrespected them, you didn't keep in contact with them, you might have trouble getting into the coaching profession.
Yeah.
You won't have help.
Yeah, let's speak upon that, because you graduated, let's say 98, 99, and you so now you've been gone for 10 years. Right. Overseas, back and forth, chasing jobs, whatever the case may be. So the contacts that you once had at 98 prior, or 99 and prior, they may not be around anymore. How did you maintain those relationships to be where Cooley could come to your house and hang out?
Well, what happened was, so Cooley was my my junior year at Rhode Island, and then my senior year, Al Skinner got a job at Boston College and took Cooley with him, and Bill Cohen and Tim O'Shea. So every year I would come back from playing overseas, I would make sure I would go to Boston College and hang out with them. I would keep in contact with my former coach, Jim Herrick, who coached us at Rhode Island. He was former coach at UCLA when they won a national championship. But I would always keep in relationships with all my former coaches. I'm a people's person. I would go to URI, my former school, and play pickup with the guys and make sure I stayed around the coaches up there. Not knowing that I was going to play basketball, it's just I like to be around people. Basketball itself, basketball people. Right. So, I've always kept relationships with my friends. I've had the same friends my whole life. So I think that's what helped me. Sometimes people forget who helped them get to where they were. And Cooley, fortunately, gave me a chance to come coach at Fairfield. And I was lucky.
Yeah, because a lot of people, like you mentioned, lose contact, and they're not going back and hanging out with the teams and stuff like that. So they lose contact, and by the time, coaches know when you're just calling them for something.
Exactly. And you can't do that.
Right.
Al Skinner, I talk to him at least once a month, if not more. My former coach at Rhode Island. He gives me great advice. He's a mentor to me, and he tries to help me out the best way he can. So, you have to keep those relationships if you want to. Not only if you want to get a job, it's just the right thing to do. Right. They help you. I mean, for Al Skinner, I wouldn't be in the position I am today. Like, he took a chance on a kid from New London, Connecticut to run a program at Rhode Island, and we went 7-20 my freshman year, and he stuck with me to go into the Elite Eight my senior year. So, I give all the credit to him for trusting in me, believing in me.
I got you. That's great. Because a lot of people don't understand the value of relationships.
Exactly.
Okay. Quick segue from relationships. What you mentioned hard work as far as the Dobo is concerned, or being an assistant coach where you're basically doing a lot of stuff that you wouldn't anticipate as a coach. And then relationships. What the next generation? What exactly do they need to become a great basketball coach? What are the couple skills that they need to really be successful in this industry?
Well, I think if you want to become a great basketball coach, you should be a great observer, master observer. Ask questions. There's nothing wrong with asking questions and trying to learn. Be a lifelong learner. And you also have to evolve because this game is always changing. Back when I was playing, we ran the flex offense. Now it's 5-out motion. So, everything was bunched up in the paint. Now everything's spread out. So you got to be able to adjust and understand the game. One thing I did, and Coach Cooley told me this, he's like, Tyson, always have a notebook and a pen. In practice, during games, in meetings, when you're watching basketball games, always have a pen and a piece of paper and take notes and go back and look at those notes. That's one thing I did to become a better coach. And you'll be surprised all the things you'll learn that you thought you knew, or you might have learned before but you forgot. And you'll be like, oh, let me write that down. I forgot all about that. Or this is something new that I didn't think about, offensively and defensively, strategical-wise. You got to change things up. So you have to be ready for that. And there's so many different great coaches out there with their own philosophies that you can learn from. And always taking notes and writing things down and learning is a key thing to becoming a great coach.
Yeah, I think you said life learner.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I also do is like I study the game. I listen to a lot of podcasts. So a lot of podcasts, reading a lot of books. It's something that's very important because as a player, you have your own ideas from being a player, but then you have to also relate to the players you're trying to teach.
Right.
And you're not going to always have all the answers that they have for you. All the questions they ask you, you might not have the answers. But reading books, listening to podcasts might give you a different perspective and idea on ways to help them become better basketball players, but also young men. I think that's our jobs as coaches. And one of the reasons I got into this is to try to help other players get to where I've gotten in my career and become better men and fathers. So
yeah, I agree with that 10,000%. And I would add, being in the education field for 20 years has helped me as a skills instructor, because obviously people learn in different ways. And as you mentioned, coaching and reading books and podcasts, listening to podcasts will help you understand how to reach a person on his or her level based upon their experiences also is big.
Absolutely, yes. Because every kid learns differently.
Yes.
Yes. Every kid learns this way, and I had to find out that out the hard way because I always thought you tell them something, they will remember it.
Mm-hmm.
Or you show them something, they would remember it.
Right.
It's not always like that. They all learn differently. So that's a great point.
Yeah, I go back to every huddle when you see a kid, you say, yo, I want you to run here, run here, run here. And the huddle like, yeah. And then they get on the court and they run everywhere but where you told them to run to.
It happens all the time. At every level.
Like,
at every level.
Well, that's funny. Okay, so now, you're currently at UMass and you guys are doing a great job. How has it been as far as the transition from Fairfield, which is a MAC level, to where you are now in the A-10, back to where your roots came from, the A-10? How was that transition?
Well, it wasn't too difficult. I thought it would be a lot different as far as talent-wise, and it really isn't. I mean, with the landscape of so many transfers and kids transferring up, kids transferring down, there's not much difference. Obviously, you know, Big Five conferences with those type of talented players and athletes, but there's really not that much different in the Atlantic 10 and the MAC. There's some great coaches in the MAC and there's some great coaches in the Atlantic 10.
Right.
It all depends on, you know, what type of players you have, how quickly they can learn and execute your system. And so I don't think there's a big difference at all.
Okay.
You know, scouting's the same. You know, we prepared very hard at Fairfield to go against other teams, and we do the same thing here at UMass. So
yeah,
it's not much different.
Not to quote this guy, but we know a guy, Dane Irvin, says basketball is basketball. Yes,
he's 100% right.
Basketball.
And you think, like, and even with the recruiting, you'll see a kid that you think, let me go back. When you're in the MAC and you're recruiting, you think the kid is good enough for the MAC.
Mm-hmm.
But now that I'm recruiting at, you know, the Atlantic 10 level, you would take some of those kids that you were going to take at the MAC to the Atlantic 10.
Yeah.
And so, you know, there's a lot of good players out there that you can find that, you know, it's like, for instance, myself. I was under-recruited. Nobody thought I could play in the Atlantic 10, and I did pretty well.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of kids out there with a chip on their shoulder, and those are the type of kids you want to recruit.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I can envision someone, you know, 5'10", 5'11", left-handed, in Connecticut, in the shadows of Boston and, you know, New England and New York, that you have a big chip on your shoulder, coming up.
Absolutely. And I always wanted to go against the New York and the Boston and New Jersey kids, DC kids, to prove myself. Right. So, you know, but those are the type of kids you want to recruit. And I think, you know, Coach Skinner, Bill Cohen, Tim O'Shea, who did a really good job of finding those type of players to come to Rhode Island. Okay. So. Okay, I just made this up, so this question here. If you are a head coach, let's say at, let's go A-10. No, let's not go A-10. Let's go Big East. 2022, where we are right now. Would you go to New London, Connecticut, and recruit a left-handed point guard, 5'10", 5'9", lightning quick? If he power left, but he can go right. But if he goes right, if he goes right, he's gonna take 2 dribbles into a pull-up. Are you going early? Are you going to recruit that kid? Are you driving up there to recruit that kid? Absolutely. No brainer. Okay. See, like I said before, there's a lot of kids that are under recruited that can play at the Atlantic 10 level that don't get a chance. Be it that they play against lesser talent. Right. So, and it happens with us all the time, and coaches in particular. Like, we watch a kid play in his high school league, and it's not very strong. Then they might not play on the big circuit, like UIBL, Adidas, Under Armour. And then you're like, okay, well, he can't compete at the level we need him to compete at because he doesn't play against that talent every single day. But there are some diamonds in the rough that you can get that can help you. And, I mean, there's pros now that are getting drafted, just like they did back when we were coming up. Right. That were under-recruited, and they're doing really well in the league. So, got you. Making money overseas. So you would recruit Coach Tyson Wheeler would recruit player Tyson Wheeler? Absolutely. Okay. Okay. Absolutely. Okay. Some little guards in the Big East killing right now. Oh, my God. In the past years, so it happens. Now, would you kill right now in 2022? Right now, with my current body, I could at least average 6 to 8 points a game.
So I'm guessing at 21, 22, you like 40 points a game.
Nah, I didn't shoot it good enough for all that. But I shot it enough, but not good enough.
Oh, that's funny stuff right there. All right, we're gonna wrap up. All right, so what words of advice would you give the next generation of head coach or assistant coaches with aspiration to become a head coach?
Aspiration to become a head coach?
Yeah.
Great question. Learn the business. I would say, get experience doing interviews.
Mm-hmm.
This past COVID season, or the last 2 years, I was on a lot of Zoom calls and we did like mock interviews.
Right.
And that's something that I've never experienced, and I've only been on a couple interviews in my life. But we did mock interviews, we got dressed up in suits, and we were on Zoom doing interviews. So, learning how to answer questions, be prepared to know what your philosophy might be, what your culture is going to look like, how you want to run your program, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
Just preparing for those things. Also, I got this from Dennis Gates, who coached at Cleveland State, who was one of my mentors. He's like, practice talking.
Mm-hmm.
It's something I need a lot of practice at, and I still am working on to this day. But, he's like, Tyson, why you riding to work, talking to the mirror?
Mm-hmm.
Talk to yourself. People might think you're crazy, but nowadays everybody thinks you're talking on the phone, so it won't look as bad.
That's true.
So, also get mentors. I have some great mentors, like I mentioned, Dennis Gates, Kevin Sutton, Ed Cooley, Sidney Johnson, Chaka Smart, Conzo Martin, Carmen Massarello, Mark Bahar. So, it goes on and on and on. Have some great mentors, guys that will help you, that's been through it.
Mm-hmm.
Ask them questions. Tell them what their philosophy might be, what they would do in different situations. Trying to learn every single day, be a lifelong learner, I think is very important.
I will say, and I hate to say this, but the COVID year was I think beneficial for the coaching profession because, like you mentioned, the Zooms. There was so many Zooms going on.
Oh my goodness,
and
too many.
it could have been, it's a little saturation, but you could have talked to a coach in Eastern Washington and whom you've never would have spoken to prior, and you forge a relationship based upon just a Zoom call. I thought that was outstanding. Guys did a great job of Zooming.
Oh, absolutely. Shaheen Holloway had one, and it helped me branch out to a lot of coaches on the West Coast and down South that I didn't know. And that's only going to help me if I'm trying to find a job.
Right.
You know what I mean? Shaheen did an excellent job with that and getting guys on Zooms. And I'm just, thankful that he invited me on there, along with a lot of different other coaches. Kevin Sutton had one. We were on there all the time. And it helps you not only give your perspective on how you see the game, but also a bunch of different coaches, how they see the game. And in recruiting, how they run their business, how they go about their day-to-day life as a coach, their family. It was excellent. I couldn't ask for any more.
Yeah, Jason Hart did the one with John Lucas. That was good too. Right?
Yep. John Lucas. He was my coach at Denver.
Yeah.
Good dude.
Yeah. He's in the news right now, but yeah, good dude.
Yeah, he did what he does. He got on somebody. They couldn't handle it, huh?
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing. Yeah.
That's Lucas for you, baby.
That's what you expect, right? That's what he does.
I mean, but that's coaching.
It is.
You gotta be able to get coached hard.
Mm-hmm. Especially on that level.
Exactly. You want to be great, you gotta be able to get coached hard.
Yeah, especially on. But anyway, we're gonna get on the tangent. I don't want to get into that. All right, so I appreciate you for stopping by via phone for the Assistants Podcast. I appreciate you for all the stuff that you've done within the basketball community, and thank you.
Thank you for having me on, Mark. I appreciate you. I appreciate what you're doing for other coaches, and continue your great success on the court and off the court, my man.
Thank you, sir.
I gotta work my son out too. Stop playing.
Yeah, I'm about to charge you on that one though. So
of course, like usual. Gotta make that dollar.
That's hilarious. All right, we out. Hold on.